I just saw today.
All right, everybody, welcome. Just a quick second to get situated, and then we will begin our work session. Today is Tuesday, November 12th. It's a couple minutes after 4 p.m., and we have two main items on our agenda today. We have feedback on the review of the initial draft of the 2025-26 WCPSS School Enrollment Plan. And then we also have a presentation I know several of you have been looking forward to on JROTC. And so we'll begin with our Office of Student Assignment and the public feedback we've received on the drafts to date.
Thanks for having us. I know this is a little bit different than what we've done in the past, but there's a method to the madness. So what we'd like to do is give you some feedback as a culmination of what we've done from the start, way back in, I think, March. Is
Actually,
what we
June of 22.
June of 22, technically. And so we really want to give you some feedback there, but then also between the last time we presented and now, there have been some feedback sessions where we want to give you that information as well. And then at some point this evening, it doesn't have to be at the end of this session, but at some point before staff leaves to go home, we're going to need some direction on any other items that you may want us to look at changing for the final draft, because we will need some time to implement that before we bring you the final draft on November 26th.
Okay.
And I'll turn it over to Susan.
Thank you all for this opportunity to share with you the feedback. This is just a new little touch point. We thought that it would be helpful, since we have been doing public engagement for so long in preparation for this year's plan, to give you a full summary report. So that's an attachment. I will not spend time going through it. It is fairly dense, but you have it available as you prepare for tonight's public hearing. Did want to spend some specific time on those two information sessions that we've held recently, and then of course make sure we all know where we are with the planning timeline. Just a quick reminder that the strategic plan alignment for our work is in family and community engagement in AIMS 6, as well as in operational effectiveness with AIMS 14 and 19. The policy that anchors this work is Board Policy 4150. It does include 4 particular pillars that we're supposed to investigate, which are student achievement, stability, proximity, and operational efficiency. These do have very specific definitions. We've shared them with you multiple times. So we'll just remind everyone that if you're interested in exploring these, the full policy is available on our website, as well as an updated informative video. Here we are in the process, and we're almost at the end of this section. We're just in step 4 of our enrollment plan process, and this one takes a decent amount of time, at least from my perspective in the Office of the Student Assignment and the planning team's work. Shortly after this, you will start your conversations about CAP schools. You'll notice there is an update here. We have confirmed that you'll actually hear your first presentation on that topic in December of this year, to kind of make sure we're continuing to get things moving forward so families know as soon as possible whether or not their schools are impacted. And then based on conversations we've been having over the last several months in facilities committees and work sessions, we will then engage in any other conversations about utilization as early as possible. We do seek to potentially move that timeline up, but at the latest we'll start those conversations with you in March. And what brings us here today is your public hearing is coming up in just an hour or so. And so we wanted to make sure that we quickly reviewed the information that we've received to date before you sit for and hear those comments. As a reminder, all of the information on this year's specific enrollment proposal can be found at the top website listed, and information about our assignment planning process can be found on the assignment planning page. Just as a friendly reminder, and I won't say much more about it this go around, the assignment planning site will stay live perpetually. So this is one that we've shared with our municipal planning partners and other agencies so that they know they can cross-link this to their sites. The enrollment proposal site is time limited, and around January we'll close it down once all the assignment plan operations have been concluded for that thing. So just a quick overview of what's included in your public engagement summary report. It's a lot of details that walk you through all of the activities that we've entered into beginning as early as June of 2022. These are a listing just really quickly of the pre-release activities. So prior to releasing the initial draft of the 2025-2026 enrollment plan, we saw insights, perspectives, unique lived experiences to help us inform the planning process. As you can see here, we hosted 10 separate information sessions during that time period, most of which were in the spring of 23 and spring of 24, and we were able to engage 402 participants throughout those sessions. We also partnered with our Data Research and Accountability Department, as well as using an online tool to have 3 rounds of focus groups during this time period, and 134 participants were able to engage in that specific type of work. We also opened 9 separate thought exchanges, which garnered just over 2,000 participants and just over 1,600 thoughts across those thought exchanges prior to the release of the initial draft. There's a note at the bottom. The complete summary is available in the board attachment, so anyone that's interested in reading all of the details about these activities and what was learned from them, you can go to that summary. Once we released it, we continued those efforts, but now with a new lens. It wasn't just about what do we need to know and think about as we're thinking of how to develop the plan. It's what information do we need to share with families so they can understand the recommendations, as well as capture any questions they might have about the recommendations. So the shift in focus for these sessions was really to make sure that we were engaging the public directly with, here's what's in the recommended portions of the plan, what questions might you have, and how can we use that information to share responses with the entire district. So after we released the plan, which was September 3rd, and through the October 15th update as well, we've held a total of 6 information sessions, an open house, 2 separate thought exchanges, a thought exchange survey, which is a slightly different tool. And you can see the list of how many contacts we were able to gather by opening and engaging in all of these activities. Again, a full summary of all of what we learned through these activities is in the summary report, and you've seen them in bits and pieces as we've presented to you over the last couple of years. So some key findings. I did want to point your attention to what the pre-release activities really did in terms of shaping the planning progress. We heard very loud and clear that as much stability as possible is preferred by families, so we've worked to have expanded eligibility rules for stability transfers in this year's plan. A commitment to cohort and calendar continuity. While we can't necessarily get full agreement on where students should go to school, the fact that communities would like to stay together in the same school and be split into the fewest number of different schools possible, that is a common thread. And so we worked really hard to honor that sort of sentiment from the community. Calendar continuity where possible. We've also tried to work toward better alignment there. It's not always possible, but when possible, we have tried to work towards that alignment. There is a preference stemming, and we've kind of been bubbling up over the last 3 years, particularly in our high growth areas. I always caution this is not universal across the entire district, but we're hearing more and more, rather than be subject to frequent reassignments, perhaps a year-round calendar would be preferred to get that extra capacity and stay at their current school. Earlier communication and engagement, we've tried to honor that request as well, and we're continuing to shape our public engagement plans in response to these types of requests. And then while it's not necessarily directly the work of our office or our planning team's office, it is important that all family members are constantly aware that high-quality teachers, high-quality administrators, high-quality activities happening in the buildings is really what's most important when you boil everything down. And so we would just draw attention to that. That is a common concern and highlight from all of these sessions. So now, let's dive in a little bit to just the ones that we've had over the last couple of weeks in response to the revised draft that was released on October 15th. The first session that we had was a general overview session where we made sure that we reviewed all of the revisions that were recommended during that October 15th presentation. So as you'll recall, we added a few more students into the stability rules by expanding it to include rising 10th grade students in one of the 2 academies at Apex Friendship or Apex High School. The new school, Pleasant Plains, had an adjusted attendance area based on feedback from the community. The original recommendations for Carroll Middle were removed from the plan based on some conflicting information from the community. Calendar application changes, specifically in response to the community that's coming from Olive Chapel and going to Bauckham, we added in a traditional calendar option of Apex Middle at the middle school level. So regardless of which way families chose, either take the stability assignment and stay at Olive Chapel, they'd have their base at Lufkin, they'd have that calendar alignment, or take the new assignment to the new school, they could then ask for Apex Middle. We even clarified on our FAQs that we would approve those for those families that are in that split situation. Like, put it in there, will approve. And then the process timeline, just in response to families that are concerned about the impacts of mid-year callbacks at CAP schools, we are going to make that adjustment internally to help support families prior to the stability transfer window opening. So we spent time talking about those 5 recommendations. We even opened up a different thought exchange, and this was actually a thought exchange survey. And so I just want to call attention to this different format was leveraged in response to feedback from prior years, where at this stage, we know what people's thoughts are, we know what the ratings are, we collected a lot of robust information after the initial release. Now families would like an opportunity to provide more characters, more information about their unique perspective, and not focus so much on the ratings. So we leveraged this tool, which allowed for much broader responses, much more detailed responses, and also kept them anonymous, as all of our surveys do. In response to this, families are continuing to prioritize the need for stability in school assignments. I think it's obvious, you hear it as well as we do, changing schools is the least preferred option. Yet we have 4 new schools that we need to open, so that's sort of an inevitability in this particular circumstance. So when at all possible, can we provide stability where we can? Also, just concern about frequent reassignments that has bubbled up in this district for decades. If you're living in a high-growth area, the frequency with which your neighborhoods are reassigned can be frustrating. And so we've worked internally to try to make sure we're only doing that every 3 years, which doesn't give a lot of comfort to families, but it's better than the every year that we were experiencing at one point in time. But we are looking to the community's feedback about, well, could we leverage year-round calendar, and then that makes that assignment, particularly at the elementary level, last a little bit longer for a community because you get those extra seats right out the gate. Anyway, so the emphasis that we saw coming out of all of the participation here, and again, a full summary is in the summary report, is that stability and continuity, proximity and commute patterns, calendar alignment are all still top of mind for families. Much more conversation about the impact on special needs students, mental health for all students, how changing schools might impact those particular groups. Community and social impacts. We've heard a lot this year in particular about neighborhood continuity and wanting to stay with a particular school. And then frustration over the limited changes in the initial draft, or to the initial draft that were shared. Overall, we had 515 individuals participate in this survey, with 246 fully completing the survey and responding to all questions. One common ground that we discovered, which I think is kind of obvious from some of the previous statements, is that if you're really, really supportive of proximity and stability and maybe not so much about the flexibility of assignment, or you kind of get the idea that we do need to be flexible in our assignments because we need to fill new schools and we're a high-growth district. Either way, whichever of those were sort of top of mind for you as a participant, community engagement was really important. And so we feel compelled to continue this work to make sure that we are engaging the community as frequently and as early as possible to give you as much feedback as possible when we get to the decision-making point. The bowling road discussion. Now, this was not on the original list of activities, but based on the conversations that you all had at the table, we thought it prudent to add this one in. So we added this in and invited everybody in the district to participate. We even opened a separate and unique thought exchange that did use the rating system and asked a few survey questions so that you could have more information as you go into your final deliberations. As a reminder, the original request from some families was that the new bowling road preferably would open on a traditional calendar, since it is co-located on the same campus as Fuquay Arena Middle. The thought exchange that we opened that was specific to this is just a sampling of the thoughts. The full thought exchange is available online if anybody wants to see all of the comments. But we had 85 total participants submit 81 thoughts and had a ratings ratio of 17. As a reminder, this is most effective. We can get closer to 30, so this isn't bad for this number of participants. Some of the higher rated thoughts were contradictory. We have some that say, I would like traditional calendar because that makes sense. It's on the same campus, so my students can be on the same calendar. Then we have, well, year-round provides less regression for student learning. Then we have maybe make the middle school year-round too. That's a way to get calendar alignment. And then, oh, please, please, please make it traditional. So we saw thoughts on all edges of the spectrum get relatively equal ratings when all was said and done. But when we looked at the total themes or thoughts by theme, the calendar alignment piece was probably the most prevalent type of thought that was given. And that's not surprising. It is something we see across our district that most of our schools, actually all to this date of our schools with the exception of high schools that are on the same campus, do operate on the same calendar. There are concerns about transition. This is just general concern, all kinds of transition, transitioning to a new school, transitioning to a new calendar, transitioning from elementary to middle school. So just anything that sort of fit into that sort of space. The support for year-round calendar, quite a few thoughts saying we really like the idea of year-round calendar. We were excited about year-round calendar. We're on a year-round calendar already, so this will be great to have it be our base assigned school. preference for traditional calendar. Similar types of comments for the traditional calendar, and probably co-located in that calendar alignment column. As a reminder, thoughts can be themed with up to 2 themes cross-matched. So if they were talking about traditional calendar and talking about calendar alignment, that same thought could show up in both of those areas. And then concerns about the process. In general, at this stage, it's not uncommon for us to hear calls for how do we understand how the process works. And that's why we've continued to build that assignment planning process, not only the website, but the engagement that we do to continue to respond to those types of concerns. When the STAR scores are applied, it shuffles the deck a little bit. You get concerns about process getting really high ratings, preference for traditional calendar, getting a much higher rating than year-round, even though year-round had more total comments, right? So you see what the STAR scores really do. It allows you to see what the sentiment of the community is when they're presented with the various thoughts and comments. So in general, the 3 key takeaways from this particular thought exchange is that calendar alignment is really top of mind for most families, with emphasis on the fact that these 2 schools are going to be located on the same campus. Transition support, just in general, we need to make sure as a district we're prepared to support all of our families as they're transitioning to new schools, to new calendars, new programming, whatever it might be for families as they transition. And then mixed views on the school calendar. Total number of thoughts was higher for year-round, but the higher STAR rating was for traditional. So you've got a bit of a mixed bag there. However, regardless of which of the 2 calendars people preferred, they did agree on calendar alignment. And so I did want to walk you through this specific recommendation because we are going to ask for some clarity since this is the second time. This will be the 3rd time as a board you're really talking about this particular topic. We'd like some clarity as we prepare for the final draft. So as a reminder, the initial presentation in September recommended that Bowling Road open as a multi-track year-round with a capacity of 924 to provide relief, as well as some sort of proximity assignments for students currently assigned to Buckhorn Creek Elementary, Fuquay Varina Elementary, Herbert Akins Road Elementary, Lincoln Heights Magnet Elementary, and South Lakes Elementary. As you can see, at least 2 of the schools on this list are already projected to be over 120% crowded for the 25-26 school year. So we are looking to try to relieve those crowding concerns. We've been able to not cap these schools at this point, but we're at the limit. The original recommendation for the attendance area, as you can see on this slide, would be the yellow highlighted area on the right side of the screen, which again pulls from those 5 schools. And that original set of recommendations projected that there'd be a better balance in distribution of crowding across these schools with sufficient room for growth in most of the schools. So you'll see that there's room in Buckhorn Creek for the growth, and it is in a high growth area. It gives us some space and some breathing room with Fuquay Varina Elementary as they prepare to move into a swing space while they undergo renovations. It allows for Herbert Akins to be more optimally utilized. It allows for Lincoln Heights to actually have a little bit of relief as well as be able to take on more magnet applications from the region. South Lakes then becomes a much more breathing room for its high growth base attendance area, and then Bowling Road starting at about a 70 to 71% projected fill rate. I do remind everybody, these all assume everybody moves, the little footnote that's at the bottom. So the actual crowding will be a little bit different as we see how stability transfers play out. I wanted to bring this slide back just to remind everybody about this general region, about the growth in the region. While there are a couple of areas that are projected to maybe have a reduction in overall student enrollment, the large, vast space here is one of our growth regions, the highest growth of which is mostly in the Buckhorn Creek Elementary base attendance area, as well as that little string on the right-hand side of the square that will impact sort of the South Lakes edges of this assignment recommendation. These were updated based on the 2023 forecast, and the 2024 forecast is currently being put together, and it's my understanding, so in early February, you'll receive those projected enrollments, and it's my understanding that it's just more of more. Yes. There's no less students coming. There's more and more students coming. Yes. February 4th will be the presentation date for that. Thank you. So we also did a quick what-if exercise with you at that October 15th presentation and shared this with the community members that participated in the information session, that if we were to open it traditional, the rough capacity would be 716, which means it would have a projected enrollment of 90 to 92% in its first year or second year of operations. Just as a friendly reminder, South Lakes Elementary opened in 2021. Obviously, that was an interesting year to open a new school. At the time, it was projected to be 82% crowded for 22-23. By the time we got there, it was 110% crowded because of the rate of growth in this region in the district. Similarly, Apex Friendship Elementary that opened in 22-23 was originally projected to be 93% crowded for that first year. By the time we got to 20th day head count, they were at 131% crowded. So we are concerned, because this is a high growth region, that this 90% could quickly become much higher than 90% in their first couple of years, particularly with research we saw even back in 2017 that when you assign families to new schools, the rate of attending base does start to climb because the school's closer and more convenient.
And also, when you have schools sharing the same campus, the staff members are allowed to have their children attend the school, so that also raises the enrollment at the schools.
One thing we did not explore during our what-ifs previously that we thought would be germane for today's discussion is, well, what if we reduce the base attendance area? And maybe that would help relieve the projected crowding for Bowling Road. So here you see an example of where perhaps we impact Buckhorn Creek Elementary a little bit less. Don't take quite as many students out of Buckhorn Creek for this particular recommendation. As a reminder, Buckhorn is impacted by both Rex Road and Bowling Road in the current round of recommendations. What you're seeing here is that the sort of railroad tracks become that edge on that southern portion, and that darker green area would stay at Buckhorn Creek. If this were the case, then Buckhorn Creek would only be reduced from its 125-ish% to 101%, and again, it's got one of those big blue arrows in its attendance area, so we would quickly need to come back with additional recommendations for that campus. Just as a way of an example of what pulling one lever might do to the rest of the system. So based on that, at this point, staff is still recommending, we would still recommend that we open Bowling Road as a multi-track year-round so that we could do the one reassignment and essentially walk away for the foreseeable future and give this area some stability and not have to come back. If you were to direct us to open it traditional, we would certainly recommend a smaller footprint. Just know that we would potentially have to come back to you in a couple of years with additional recommendations for this region to address the crowding that will remain at least one of the campuses that was originally supposed to be really. And with that, we're almost at the bottom. Today is your public hearing, so you'll have that later this evening. Staff will be present to listen and take notes, and then following the public hearing, as Glenn mentioned, if you'd like to give us any guidance or direction then, or if you have guidance or direction for us today, we would like to make sure that we're well prepared for your presentation on the 26th. That way you can feel comfortable reviewing and adopting the plan at that meeting. Hit the websites. And with that, we are subject to your questions.
All right.
Or guidance.
Thank you, Ms. Coyle. Questions from the board, Ms. Mahaffey?
So the question that I have is, we've heard from a group of the projected Pleasant Plains community about what it would be if Pleasant Plains opened on traditional calendar rather than year-round. I know I had called and asked for those projected numbers. I was wondering if you had them.
Similarly, with Pleasant Plains being in a high-growth area, the initial projections for the 25-26 school year would be 86%, climbing to 92% by 26-27, which would mean we'd rapidly bump up against full capacity. And with what we saw with Apex Friendship, it could even be in the first year of operations.
On traditional calendar.
On traditional calendar, I guess. Thank you.
Any other questions about the feedback? Vice Chair Johnson.
No questions other than thank you very much for all of the scenarios and attempt adjustments on Bowling Road. I mean, you're not going to be surprised. I still feel the same. Hence, while yes, there were mixed reviews, it's still consistent that families care about calendar alignment. And again, I actually was surprised no one had recommended Fuquay Middle move to year-round until I actually was in community a few weekends ago. And it was an interesting group of people who currently are at Fuquay, and most of them did not want year-round but could understand why people would be asking for that given the projected continuous growth. So I still stand in the same place, so I don't have a recommendation for you. I still am going to absolutely ask the board to consider an amendment to the assignment. I don't intend to vote the entire assignment plan down. I think that's important for you to know as staff as you prepare for next week. So unless someone's going to give me some real enlightenment differently at the public hearing today, that is my intent.
Thank you. Other questions, other comments about the feedback to the plan?
Mr. Hirsch, can you just remind me what middle school,
Fuquay Middle.
what's the capacity of Fuquay?
It's
Like,
brand new.
Brand new one
48.
is 1248, plus we have 6 flex capacity classrooms.
How full is it now? How full is it now, and is it protected?
As of last week, 2 seconds.
Well, let's just say we were jam-packed until we built a new school.
Right.
Like
So it
literally,
was in
they would double their
900-ish
capacity.
capacity before.
And we had them at almost 1,400.
As of the 4th, we had 1,004 students.
And
Sufficient, right?
was there a conversation to make that year-round?
It was not, because we had just recently opened Herbert Akins Middle, which gave Fuquay a traditional, because those are their 2 middle schools
Right.
now. So when we opened Herbert Akins Middle, it allowed them to have a year-round and a traditional, which is what most small communities would want, and we want them to have that option. So there was an initial discussion to make Fuquay year-round. The large discussion that we were successful at is building them a new school.
And Glenn or Marcella can chime in, but in general, at the middle school level, our building program has caught up with our growth needs. So we don't need multi-track year-round at the middle school as much as we do at elementary because of the K-3 class size legislation. That was correct.
Any further questions or follow-up? Dr. Ing?
Yes, thank you. I just want to clarify on page 23, 24. So you're saying that the amount of thought exchange, total thoughts between year-round and traditional were not that different in numbers, correct?
Right, the total number of support for year-round were a little bit higher, but when the stars and the ratings were done, they
Right.
more than flip-flopped
So people were
places.
rating
Yeah.
the traditional calendar.
Would rate those
preference
higher.
Okay. Right. Thank you for the explanation.
And that just brings up another point. You know, we invite the feedback, and as you saw, we had multiple opportunities in this whole process, close to like 2,500
Did a
people
great job.
all coming in. But still, on like that one specific question, you're talking about 25 people out of maybe, 900 students.
Right.
So you have to take it as, this is what people said, given the opportunity, but how much validity is
Can
that
we put in
for
there?
everybody? It's hard to say.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Anyone else?
Any questions about the summary report?
Ms. Caulfield?
I just have a question for Ms. Johnson-Hostler. You were saying that his parents were telling you they would rather switch it to?
No, there was a small subset in the conversation, and the large majority were like, absolutely not, you can apply to Herbert Akins. I was just making it a little nicer, but that was the real conversation.
Yeah, the total number of comments in the thought exchange recommending that we consider Fuquay as a multi-track year-round at the middle school level were very, very few. But they did come in.
And again, thank you, Susan, or Ms. William, for making that point. But those are also probably the same few that are coming from a year-round elementary. So so the bulk of those families are not. The bulk of those schools, as you noted on the chart, are already traditional. So you can clearly see the distinction based on your personal experience, which is how we all answer these questions.
It makes sense to stay that way.
Right.
And that was actually my question, which was of the feeder schools that come in, what's the breakdown between year-round and traditional?
Herbert Akins Road Elementary is the only one of the 5 that's currently
All the
multi-track
rest are
year-round. Now, any students who are on multi-track at one of their year-round calendar options would also be able to come in if
Right.
it were to open year-round and not have that shift.
Final thoughts, final questions? All right, well, we've got a lot to dig into with the summary report. We really appreciate it. Thank you for all your hard work.
I mean, that's very helpful. You went above and beyond. I just want to be clear, I appreciate all the work you put into it.
Just recognizing it was a 3-year process, we thought you're hearing today, but
Yeah.
there were a lot of people who participated early on that shaped the planning process, and we didn't want those thoughts to kind of get lost in the current. You have a balance of everything.
And we can never make people happy, including board members, but I do think you all have done a great job of letting the community see that you aren't just giving us a recommendation, you're actually listening to all the feedback, even if it's 25 people.
All
Thank
right,
you so much.
Thank you.
And we'll be available after the public hearing if you have any questions or follow-up for us.
All right, the next item on our agenda is our presentation on the JROTC program. So we'll take a minute to transition over to that. Joined by Mr. Brian Glendenning and looks like Mr. Cook. Dr. Wilson Norman. Once we switch out the presentations, we'll be ready to begin.
All right, well, we'll go ahead and jump in if everybody's ready. Good afternoon, everyone. We do appreciate the opportunity to provide the board and the public with an overview of the Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps, JROTC program in the Wake County Public School System. As many of you probably know, JROTC does play a vital role in developing leadership skills, fostering citizenship, and promoting personal responsibility among our students. And today, Mr. Glendenning is going to provide an outline of kind of the current state of our JROTC programming in Wake County, and also highlight its positive impact on the students and our community, and also share a little bit about the vision we have in terms of future growth and opportunities for expansion in the future. Our goal is to ensure that JROTC continues to serve as a pathway for leadership development, academic success, and for community engagement for our students in the Wake County Public School System. Just a quick summary then of our purpose and intent. First, we do want to share the mission and purpose of JROTC. It is focused on motivating and inspiring young people to be better citizens by instilling the values of leadership, discipline, and respect. And through the program, ultimately, we want our students to be able to prepare for any path that they might choose in life. I think a lot of times, historically anyway, there's been maybe a misperception that it's just about a pathway to the military or armed services, but it's actually a pathway to all kinds of careers and future skill sets and opportunities that will benefit our students. We'll also share some data on graduation rates, academic success, and life skills. Perhaps not surprisingly, JROTC cadets often demonstrate improved academic performance, with many reporting enhanced study habits and classroom engagement. Life skills are also an important capstone for the program, where cadets learn teamwork, leadership, communication, problem-solving skills. We'll also reference, though it's not the focus of JROTC specifically, the ASVAB assessment, the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery. And I have to confess, I didn't know what that acronym stood for until looking it up. But it's not just, again, about JROTC, but we want to take the opportunity today to reference that. That's an important assessment tool for some of our students in terms of college and career readiness, and kind of providing some ideas about future pathways for success, not necessarily, again, specific to the military. We'll also highlight community connections. JROTC actively engages with the community through various events. One of those just recently, Dr. Taylor and Mr. Glendenning and others participated in what was called the Meet Your Army experience down at Fort Liberty. Mr. Glendenning will share a little bit more about that, but that is reflective of the opportunities that students in the program have to connect with the community, that not only strengthens those ties, but also, again, promotes those values of citizenship and service. And then again, we'll close with a brief look at the potential for future expansion of JROTC programming. We do aim to expand the footprint of the program in the district, starting with the introduction of a new program at Rollsville High School beginning in the 2025-2026 school year. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Of course, our goal is to not only grow the numbers, but also elevate the quality of the experiences offered, ensuring that JROTC remains a valuable asset for students and for the community. We'll also highlight new opportunities to explore expanded programming. One of the slides that we'll get to in just a second, I think it's slide 4, you'll see a little bit of kind of a static state over the last decade or so nationally in terms of the ability to expand programs. And so Mr. Glendinning will talk a little bit about why we haven't expanded the program in a decade plus in Wake. It's not necessarily reflective of a lack of desire at the local level. It's more reflective of national conditions, budget constraints, military focus, and those kinds of things. We feel like there is some movement nationally that may open some opportunities up that, quite frankly, have not been there for districts like Wake and others across the country over the last decade or so. Just a few connections to our strategic plan. I think they're self-explanatory, but we'll call some of these out. The JROTC program directly supports our district's goal of 98% graduation rate by 2028 through leadership training and structured support. JROTC fosters a sense of commitment and accountability among cadets, which I think we know and understand. Experience and research shows significantly contribute to higher grad rates. Additionally, JROTC emphasizes academic success, encouraging cadets to maintain their grades, achieve educational milestones. As a district, of course, and our strat plan calls this out, we are dedicated to eliminating proficiency disparities, and JROTC actively promotes inclusivity, engaging students from diverse backgrounds and providing equal opportunities for growth, leadership, and participation for all students. And then we also have multiple connections with AIM 8 around high-quality instructional core. JROTC expands access to high-quality instructional programming through structured curriculum. The program provides enrichment opportunities that connect with core content areas, offering students a unique blend of physical, academic, and leadership experiences. Students have a point of connection. I think we know and understand the value of that in terms of engagement for students. Programming offers various co-curricular activities such as drill competitions, community service, and leadership camps. And I think, again, these activities not only support academic learning, but also build camaraderie and school pride, which fosters a sense of belonging for our students. So with that background and a little bit of context in mind, I'll turn it over to Mr. Glendinning to share more details about programming in Wake. Again, both current state, a little bit of historical perspective, but also the direction we propose to head moving forward into the future.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. And I do want to highlight that point of connection piece. I think this program offers students the opportunity to have an adult who sees them. And I think the importance of that with students, particularly students who may be in a marginalized area socially or wherever that might be, this gives them a place where an adult sees them, and an adult gives them a place where they feel safe and needed and understood. So on that note, we'll take a look at just some trends, the history of JROTC. This is national history. And again, Mr. Cook talked a little bit about that plateauing that we saw as far as units nationally. So when you see about 2013, 2014, I was actually in this position at that time. That was when we started to see some federal cuts across the board. We saw opportunities that we used to have for 12-month employees in JROTC instructor positions. Those were grandfathered positions, so anybody who was new, the military was then just paying 10 months from there on out. We've been lucky to actually keep a lot of our JROTC teachers in place, so we were able to keep those 12 months coming in from the military, but in certain areas we didn't. Air Force did not do any grandfathering, so we ended up, and I believe it was 2015-16, we ended up cutting those programs down to 10 months for each of our instructors. We were able to, as part of our desire to make sure we had a quality program and we were recruiting quality instructors, we were able, about 2 years ago, right about this time of year, we were able to put all of our JROTC instructor positions back to 12 months, which allowed us to have a deeper pool of applicants to be able to bring quality instructors back in. So that was kind of step one in getting our programs a little bit more meat on the bone for our programs. And we're going to actually have more opportunities. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. You see the static issue. There's also a note that in our area, we're in the southeast region for JROTC, the only real way to get new programming during those years was if another school somewhere in the region, which includes North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia, lost their program, and you lose that program, and then the next school on a long wait list would get the programming. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, but this is really just an illustration of kind of where the growth was and where the growth stopped, and they're about to start a little bit of an uptick in offering for programs nationally, but just a little bit of background information regarding that. We currently have 8 programs in our district. We have 2 Air Force, 1 Navy, and 5 Army programs. A couple of those have been here for several decades, and our Army programs, for the most part, are our newer programs, with the exception of Wake Forest. They're kind of the granddaddy of them all for our Armies. There's a lot of information on each of these slides. I'm just going to give you a brief, just bird's eye view of what's going on. And the main thing to underscore with each of these programs is how much they are doing in our community. And this comes back to what I kind of said at the very beginning. These students have a special place in each of their communities, and they have the opportunity to go out and find opportunities to be public servants. So I'll start really quickly with Broughton. They designed a Joy for Clothing drive aimed at providing clothing to those in need. The drive highlights their commitment and service to community engagement. Also, a Food Bank of Eastern North Carolina food drive, which allowed to support local families and foster the spirit of giving within their community. Broughton is also looking at going into a droneology program. We're looking to get through some not hurdles, but trying to make sure that we're doing it the right way with getting risk management to approve the programming with the use of drones and the technology that's used with it. But I believe that'll be up and running in the spring of this year. Also, some prestigious graduates. They have a Top Gun from 2013, and another student in 2002 received a J100 scholarship and was accepted to the Air Force JROTC Flight Academy. Another note for Broughton, Master Sergeant Duke McDuffrey is a proud alumnus of Broughton. He went to high school, he graduated there in '86, and after serving 24 years active duty, he now instructs the program at Broughton and has been there for several years. There's also a list of different prestigious universities that have been attended by Air Force JROTC graduates from Broughton. Cary, they have a Navy program. They're in their 28th year. And they are looking to make sure that they continue to thrive. They have drill meet coming up. They also have a number of prestigious graduates from there that are going to different universities, and a lot of honor graduates and Navy prep graduates coming out of Cary. Enloe and Garner are both in their 13th year. Those are our newest group of our newest programs, our Army JROTC programs. They have, again, the events that they're doing. They just finished a Veterans Day celebrations, 2 for Enloe, one at Golden Corral, one at the Cardinal at North Hills. Enloe has a long tradition of a military ball that they host at NC State University Club, which fosters camaraderie and tradition. Garner is now in its 13th year. They've had color guard performances at the 540 opening ceremony and various Veterans Day events, and color guarded all their home football games, and they've been involved in Habitat for Humanity, and they'll be doing a build on November 15th and the 6th. They were a participant in our Meet the Army Day events, as well as 4 of our other Army programs. And they have also had notable achievements with their cadets that you can see listed on your screen. Knightdale is now in its, it says 20th year, but it is not in its 20th year. They are in their 13th year as well. They are also in that group of Army programs that we received 13 years ago. They have our largest program. They have 222 student participants at Knightdale High School. Again, involved in Habitat for Humanity. They came to meet your Army Day. They'll be taking part in the Thanksgiving and Christmas Day parades and the Military Bowl. And they also honored veterans on November 10th at the school. They had 12 cadets from last year go on to various colleges, illustrating their commitment to education. and 10 more that pursued military service in different branches of the military. Millbrook has a long list of events, 12 events. Most recently, they did a Veterans Day event at Duke Hospital, and they also did Meet Your Army Day. Millbrook, as far as their competitive success, has one of the top Raider competition teams in the country. They are consistently ranked in the top 20 of schools nationwide, which is, again, a testament to the work that the instructors and the students are doing there. Sanderson Air Force JROTC, one of our older programs, is in their 31st year. They recently did the presentation of colors at a veterans briefing hosted at St. Timothy's School by Congresswoman Deborah Ross. And they've had several military and college graduates coming out in the last 2 years. Wake Forest had 18 events that they liked to share with the board, so you can look through those. Their most recent ones were the color guard at Youngsville Academy's veteran program for participation in the Wake Forest Veterans Memorial Ceremony. And one not to miss is the Field of Dreams event that they had in the springtime. If you have not had the opportunity to go to that, I suggest that you reach out to Ginger Cribb, who is one of the instructors at Wake Forest JROTC, and get the date and make sure that you are in attendance for that, because it is a great, great program. And notable achievement, they have a graduate who has earned the national championship title in the 125 division of collegiate boxing. She is a West Point cadet at the moment, and she is pursuing her chemical engineering degree and is a member of the West Point Excel Scholars Program, showcasing her dedication to both academics and athletics. So that was a mouthful, and it is just a tip of the iceberg as far as what these students are out in our community doing. I'm not sure that any program that we have in our schools competes with the amount of outreach that our JROTC programs does provide. And this is 8 programs, we're going on 9, and hopefully we'll be able to talk a little bit about how we might be able to expand that footprint a little bit more as we go through. We're going to talk a little bit about insights gathered from some family surveys and student feedback. These are national surveys that come from the Army themselves. They're not Wake County specific. This first survey is a cadet survey. Just going through that, 91% of the cadets who were enrolled in JROTC agreed that it effectively prepares them for the next grade level. 90% more feel that JROTC holds high expectations for their participants, and 92% believe that the program teaches them to be better citizens. 90% indicated that JROTC helps them understand the connection between their classroom and what goes on outside the classroom when they get into the real world. A couple of areas that were looked at for improvement are the digital learning tools, looking for a desire to increase and enhance that learning experience with digital. And also, cadets indicated a need for increased opportunities for families to engage with the program beyond just the students in the class and going out. There's also a parent survey, a lot of similar information coming from our parents. 94% strongly believe that it helps their students to prepare for the future. 94% believe that it fosters good citizenship. And another 94% of parents believe that it prepared their students for the next thing, whether it be college, whether it be career, whether it be military, whatever it is. Parents felt like the program was successful in prepping their students for that. Parents believe that their students, 82% of them believe that there's a strong learning environment for their children in JROTC. And the real life connections, again, 82% of parents believe that their students are ready for the real world as a result of their JROTC experiences. And 94% believe that students are better citizens as a result of their participation in programming. And again, parental involvement was underscored by the parents. They want to be more involved nationally, and I think that that's something that we can also work on as a district. And enhancing support services to make sure that students receive the help they need academically beyond a JROTC program. So while ASVAB is not a JROTC aligned assessment, and it is not necessarily a direct path to the military, the ASVAB does allow
signal lost.
for,
Okay.
where are you trying to go?
I know where I'm at.
The ASVAB not only assesses academic skills, but it also evaluates skills in areas such as technical knowledge, mechanical understanding, and spatial reasoning, and the results can help students make informed decisions about their future, whether they choose to pursue a military career or other vocational opportunities. We're looking at options to assist students looking to participate in the assessment. One option is to assist our students is an ASVAB prep course that is offered by the Army through their March to Success platform. So I think communicating this more widely in our schools is going to be something that we focus on. If you go in, I don't know if anyone has had the opportunity to go into March to Success, but essentially it's module-based, and it goes through the different pieces that a student would go through ASVAB testing. Now, the ASVAB is essentially the opportunity for a student to find out some things about themselves and maybe find a career that they might not be thinking about. But there are prep opportunities, and the ASVAB is used if a student is choosing to go into the military to prepare them to be at certain levels and enter at certain levels of the military. So our current setup is ASVAB is usually coordinated through the military recruiter who reaches out to the school. Often it's the CDC, the Career Development Coordinator at the school, who will set up testing windows. We did discuss, I had the opportunity to have a lot of discussions with recruiters when we went to Meet Your Army Day, and we did discuss maybe having shorter district-wide windows that are communicated more widely as a district, where we can say between October 1st and November 30th, everyone in the district has the opportunity to take ASVAB testing, and there might be a smaller window at each school, but at least we could communicate as a district that these are the dates, and then again, possibly in the spring, we might have dates. Our recruiters indicated that they wouldn't have a problem being able to support us in doing that and being able to get into schools and get those opportunities and getting those materials for schools. So there is no current district-wide schedule, but we're looking into the possibility of at least creating that window so we can communicate it more for parents and for students who have an interest in looking at that. Back to JROTC items. The rank advantage for participating in JROTC is listed on the screen here. So if you participate in, if you don't participate at all, you're usually enlisted as an E1. And just an example here of an E1 monthly pay would be $1,773. But for the amount of experience that you have in JROTC, if it's 2 years or 3 years, you actually have the opportunity to make more money. An E2 would get $21.49 per month, or an E3 would be $22.60. So cadets with 1 to 2 years of JROTC can enlist as an E2, and those with 3 or more can advance to an E3, and that's $500 per month getting in the door as in the military. So we're looking at that opportunity to go into a career. JROTC actually gives students beyond the college path, but students that are going into this path, it actually gives them a leg up and an opportunity to earn more right off the bat as an E2 or an E3 when they go into the military, if that is their choice.
And before we leave that slide, I want to just highlight something Mr. Glendenning just referenced. I think in terms of the district-wide administration of the ASVAB, it's not specific to 8 JROTC programs, and quite honestly, it's not necessarily Mr. Glendenning's specific purview. That's something that I think in digging in, even preparing for this presentation, we would call this an opportunity for growth in terms of even tracking data. We've got data research and accountability in our testing office right now is working to determine if we've got access at the district level to ASVAB scores, for example. So even being able to kind of track from year to year how our students are doing that are participating in the test, what those tests are showing, could be one more metric that we're using to kind of measure the ongoing work around college and career readiness. So I just wanted to kind of call that out. This is the work of counselors in student support services. Brian also mentioned career development coordinators as well. So it's really a coordinated effort well beyond just the 8 schools in our district out of 34 high schools that have a JROTC program. So I just wanted to kind of highlight and emphasize that point.
So our research development and accountability folks helped us out with some statistics regarding graduation rates of JROTC students. And the underscore here is that this is graduation rates of students from 10th grade through 12th grade. It does not include 9th graders. So you might see that 93% and you say that's a little bit higher than our district graduation rate. That is the reason that it's higher, is because it's taking out that cohort of 9th graders and it's just 10th through 12th graders. And really the main thing with this is you can see that trend go up, based on the participation in JROTC. So students who get into 2 or 3 or 4 courses are graduating at or above their non-JROTC peers. And again, this is 8 schools. This is not, this is a comparison of those 8 school programs and those 8 JROTC programs versus everybody, whether they have a JROTC program or not in their school. But the main piece here is understanding that once we have students involved in these programs and once they are recognized and once they feel like they are in, then they get through school. And then when we look at the next slide, we talk about how they do with lasting outcomes. And again, this is from our data and accountability folks. And these are our transfer and attainment rates for JROTC participants. So we're looking at college outcomes are consistently stronger for our students who go 4 years. In JROTC. They are also our long-term JROTC students enroll and they complete their degrees at similar or higher rates than non-JROTC included students. And then for our 2-year college enrollers, our long-term JROTC students transfer at a higher rate than our non-JROTC students. And our bachelor's degree attainment for our non-JROTC students was slightly higher, but both groups completed bachelor's degrees at much higher rates than just our short-term kids, our kids who are in for 1 year. And then the 2-year college attainment was highest for our long-term JROTC out of those 3 groups where we're looking at non-JROTC short-term or long-term. So I think that this speaks to the preparation of that program and the preparation that JROTC gives students for when they come out. And this is based on our class of 2017. That's our 6-year data point. But it is indicative of the work that our JROTC leaders do with our students. So we did have an opportunity on Thursday. Dr. Taylor and some folks from communications and myself accompanied 5 groups from 5 different Army JROTC programs to Meet Your Army Day. And so what Meet Your Army Day was interactive exhibits, there was career information, there was live demonstrations, there was Q&A sessions with soldiers and recruiters, where students were able to have an open dialogue about military service. It was really a great day for everybody involved. Students were very, very focused on all of the things that we were able to go through. We were able to look at the life of a medic. We were able to look at some different options for students. We were able to look at different machinery and how it works, and students were able to participate with different pieces of equipment. And they had a lot of great questions, and I was really proud to see how the students were interacting with the different folks who are on site and asking very good questions regarding career and paths that they have. One student in particular, Abigail from Knightdale, Dr. Taylor and I had several conversations with Abigail over the course of the day. She described personal barriers she's been able to overcome, largely due to her participation in JROTC at Knightdale High School. Dr. Taylor and I had the pleasure of speaking with her regarding who she sees herself being in the future and her view of how education will open the door to her successful endeavors. Through her experience, she's found her voice and gained the courage to audition for the Knightdale High School performance of The Color Purple, which she will be performing in this Thursday, Friday, and Saturday at Knightdale High School. So if you want to see one of our success stories, then you are invited to attend The Color Purple at Knightdale High School on Thursday, Friday, or Saturday. So our new program will be a Navy National Defense Cadet Corps at Rollsville High School. The NNDCC is a variation of JROTC in that it is kind of a startup. So what Rollsville will start with is one cadet. The months of employment are paid for by the school. The uniforms will be paid for by the school, and all expenses will be paid for by the school, with the hopes that, based on enrollment, if we can get our enrollment up over the next 2 or 3 years, then we would qualify to have a JROTC program, a Navy JROTC program at Rollsville High School, and that would be the point where the branch would give us 12 additional months of employment, would give us the remaining uniforms, the remaining supplies, and those remaining things. So we're looking at a startup for that, and this was a workaround based on kind of being blocked from JROTC opportunities. So when we had a conversation in July, I believe it was, with kind of branch command for the Navy, they kind of described the path and how it would be, and we said it's not a lot different from us starting up a JROTC program anyway, with a couple years runway. The expectation based on Mr. Perry, the principal at Rollsville High School's conversations with students and with parents in the community, is that that program will be filled pretty quick, and that it will grow fast, and that it will be a JROTC program within the next few years. So that is one path that we're looking at. 25, 26, we will have that program. We have applied, we have been accepted. Defense Corps programs are generally accepted pretty quickly because there's not a lot of commitment from the branch, and they want to see growth. So we're also going to be looking at additional opportunities with the Army. I talked to their branch command recently, and they are looking to expand Army JROTC programming for the first time in several years by about 10 programs nationally each year, which means that we will have the opportunity to be considered for additional programming. I think that we have good candidates in our district. I think that we already have some long-standing programs that have demonstrated success. If we are able to get some of those programs, that's great, but if we are not, then we can explore the Defense Corps programming in the Army or in other branches and try to go those routes to get this important programming and this leadership building for students in that way. So we have a couple of paths. One's funded, one is not as funded immediately as we would like. I did discuss what the cost might be. So just an example of the cost for a startup for a Defense Corps program with 50 students for their uniforms, swords, flags, ribbons. We're looking at about $41,000 to $53,000, depending on the size, the number of students who start, plus 12 months of employment. So that's kind of the price tag on starting programs. The price tag for a JROTC program is less because we have more support buying the uniforms and things like that. We still have to have the 12 months of employment, essentially. So that concludes our overview, and I'm now open for any questions that you all have or comments or suggestions for our program.
All right, thank you, Mr. Clendenning. I know we've got a lot of board interest in the issue. I'm sure we have a lot of questions and comments. I had 3 questions myself, just really quickly. The first, is ROTC completions a metric we track in our strategic plan in terms of college and career readiness?
Not that I'm aware of, Mr. Haggerty. Just in a quick review, I know ASVAB is not specifically mentioned. So that's certainly an opportunity that we can explore.
It does seem like something that makes sense,
Yeah, it
right, in
does.
terms of actual career preparation, that if these young men and women are going through this, that we do track it and treat it like any other career.
Yes, sir, we can absolutely pursue that.
The second question I had is, I appreciated you showing the number of cadets at each school. A question that comes to us often is about capacity. How much capacity is there at any given school? For example, if a student is very interested in a program that's not offered at their school, they might seek a transfer to a school with JROTC, but we don't want to send them all the way to the school and then find out that there's no more seats available. Do you know how that capacity is determined?
So it's changed over the past few years because probably about 10 years ago or so, I've been here long enough to be able to say 10 years ago. 10 years ago, it was kind of as simple as you would go to student assignment, you'd say, I would like to go to this school because they have a JROTC program and my base assignment does not. And usually those were things that were able to be considered. I know student assignment looks at the enrollment, the overall enrollment of the school.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't want to sidetrack you. Not so much, maybe I should have thrown in the example of the transfer. I'm just talking about students, whether they're trying to transfer in or they're base students. Do you know how we determine the capacity at each school for the JROTC program?
So we have 2 instructors at every school. And Knightdale has 222 students. That's our largest, and both of those instructors are working with those students through two semesters of work. So our other programs do not have near that amount, but they have the same number of instructors.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Haggerty, I was going to say the same. Essentially, it's staffing, right? And so if we've got 2 instructors at a campus, then it's really a matter of how many students can go through the program. As a principal at the time, when we started a JROTC program, we had students that the demand for the program far exceeded the capacity of those 2 instructors to provide it. So there was actually a waiting list at the time. But that's the main limiting factor.
Thank you. And my final
I
question.
think with 2 instructors, that would be 6 blocks that they would have to be able to put in the master
That's
schedule.
right. Yes, sir.
And my final question is back on slide 4. You had descriptions of the different programs. There's a reference to cyber programs.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know Mr. Swanson and I have been out to visit Lake Cary ROTC, and they have different cyber courses. That's part of the training, things that are offered. But what are those cyber programs, 10 cyber programs? Do you know anything about that?
So we did an exploration of cyber programs when they were piloted, and they were interested in coming, I believe it was to Apex High School. And at that time, Apex has a CTE program that has something to do with something that was very, very similar to what the Army was offering at that time. And
AOIT?
What was
The AOIT?
Yes.
Information technology.
Yep. So the concern was bringing in a piloted program which wasn't really research-based just yet. They were trying to gather the research and pulling students from a place. The students who are probably going to be interested in that were already in a place within the school. So it's still being piloted. The feeling about it wasn't strong at the moment. The funding was not, it was kind of similar to an NNDCC too. It was not a carrot that the military was saying they were offering the program, but at that point it didn't have the feeling that it was quite ready to be in our schools yet. We can definitely have more discussions about that and see where they're at through how their pilot came out. But it's 10 programs, and this was about 3 years ago at least that we had the program. They only have 10 nationally, so I would have a little bit of pause on that at the moment regarding cyber for that reason.
I appreciate it. Thank you. I saw Ms. Mahaffey and then Mr. Hershey.
As we're looking at different pathways, because this is something that a lot of students and parents are looking for, and we can't offer it at every school. I was wondering, I know there are a couple Civil Air Patrol units that have a cadet program, and they're an affiliate of the Air Force. I don't know if that's like a partnership that we can explore for like an after-school programming
Yeah.
that we could house at our schools, or a way for us to connect with our local Civil Air Patrol. I know they generally come to Holly Springs High School for their Memorial Day ceremony. Holly Grove Elementary School for their Memorial Day ceremony, and do like a missing man flyover, and it's usually students from the area that are doing the color guard for them. So if that's a potential avenue, I don't know.
I'll definitely reach out, and I like the idea of offering at least club opportunities or different outside opportunities within the school setting if we don't have the opportunity for the larger program. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
And Ms. Mahaffey, I'll just extend, you just made me think of another important question I think that maybe we haven't yet answered, and that is, what parameters and factors does the district consider when we're thinking about expanding the footprint beyond the 8 schools that you see on the screen? And I think one of them is, first of all, what are the needs of the school, right? What schools do we have that, based on data, and if we're looking at, again, the strategic plan, and we're looking at graduation rates, we're looking at proficiency gaps, we're looking at academic achievement, we're looking at student attendance, as the board discussed in this forum last week, as an important opportunity for growth. What programs do schools have? So once we've looked at data, are they magnet, non-magnet? Do they have career academies? I think the board is familiar with our long-range 10-year plan of having a career academy in every high school. Similar to that process, we've got to work really hard to make sure, number one, as Mr. Glending just referenced, there's interest among the community and the students in the school, and maybe a good way to measure some of that interest could be in the form of more informal club and extracurricular activities like a Civil Air Patrol or a club that might help us gauge maybe where we go next in terms of a larger expansion of that footprint. So I wanted to mention that, because I think, one of the questions is, well, how did we arrive at the 8 schools that we've got? And I think, given the fact that it's been more than a decade since the district expanded any of these programs, it's important for us to think about and consider strategically where we might go next and why, and what programs those schools already have available.
Mr. Hershey, then Dr. Inman, Ms. Evans.
2 things. One, follow-up to Chair Haggerty. It would be helpful to have actual ballpark numbers on capacity at these, not just, well, whatever the school can take, because we don't know. And we get put in situations in student transfers where we're wondering. And so if we have that data and we say, well, okay, that's available, it doesn't mean they're going to get in. But at least they have the opportunity, that helps us.
So I can say on behalf of the JROTC programming,
Yeah.
all JROTC programs currently, I don't know of any JROTC program that's turning anyone away out of our 8 programs.
Okay, great.
So that's not a
helpful.
JROTC turning away.
That's helpful, what you just said. If you could go to the increased graduation rates and the courses by 10th grade students, can you kind of explain, like, they're picking 1 course versus 2 to 3 courses versus how do they get to 4 courses?
So this is the matriculation of LET. So LET programming is LET 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are the 4 starting courses that a JROTC student would take. So the 1 course kids are LET 1, and then they're done. And then the 2 and 3 are kids who are getting to that second or third level of JROTC, and then the 4 courses are the kids who are getting.
Why would they be done after 1?
Because they are electing not to pursue JROTC after their first experience.
Thank you. Okay,
I
that
had that same
clarifies.
question.
Okay.
Right.
Yes?
Nope.
All right, Dr. Inman, Ms. Evans.
I just wanted to kind of point out, or maybe you can point out for me, looking at some of the different programs at different branches of the military, but yet when you look at some of the notables, that people are going into different branches outside of what that JROTC was accomplishing, right? So I think there was some mindset that people have to go to this particular one because this is the Air Force one or this is the Army one, but they can accomplish whatever branch in
Yep, so they can have that same inroads. If they are at an Army program and they want to go into the Air Force, then they can start on that second or third level, on that second or third tier of pay, regardless. So they view JROTC as a positive leadership experience that they want to have coming into the military, and it doesn't matter what
Yeah,
branch they're going
because
into.
we've seen when, people, request a certain school because this one has this particular branch of, JROTC.
That's a preference. It might be a family preference.
That's
Yeah,
true.
but it's not going to make a difference as far as the outcomes or things that they might be able to attain as far as scholarships or anything growing to the next level.
All right, thank you. Ms. Evans and then Ms. Crawford.
So, thank you. I learned a ton. This is like really great information. And I have 5 questions, but I'm only going to ask you one, so I'll follow up another time. My one question, so with us having to fund any new program, where does that come from? Is that county commissioner, is that local dollars? Or does the state offer anything? That's my question.
Yeah, so I think anytime at this point when we're talking about program expansion and we're talking about local dollars, it would come with the reallocation, repurposing, reprioritizing of existing dollars, right?
So that's what Rolesville is currently doing. They're looking at their ADM and they're creating 12 months of employment.
Okay, so
Which-
it's not necessarily, if I understand you correctly, it's not something necessarily that Dr. Taylor has to include in his proposal as like a new ask in the upcoming, is that correct?
That's correct. For this first iteration at Roseville High School, that's not a new budget ask. That is budget
Okay.
neutral at the district level.
All right, thanks.
And so normally the way you would do it is a teaching position at the school, and so the principal would choose any of those that they have available to fund in our JROTC program position, and then the military will provide an additional position, so they match what you have.
Right, okay. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Coffin?
I have a couple of questions. I'll try and condense it. You said that at the Roseville High School, they're kind of like in a pilot phase, so to speak, right? And then after 3 years, you're hoping that they'll get funding from the program itself.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just trying to understand, if they're trying to expand it, and you said like 10%, I'm assuming that's across the board, right? Not just with Wake County, just their program itself, they're trying to expand it 10%?
So what they're looking to do is trying to if you keep a JROTC program by either having 100 kids in your program or 10% of your student population. So we look at 100 kids for most of our high schools because that's the lower of the two. So what Rolesville will be looking to do is try to get their enrollment in their NNDCC as close to 100 students as possible. And as they do that, they'll be able to apply to the Navy at a higher level of urgency for a JROTC program. And based on our conversations with Naval Branch Command, they said if you are trending towards 100 after 3 or 4 years, then that would be good standing for looking at earning a JROTC program and being awarded one from the Navy. Now, that's the Navy and different branches. So this is where there is some variation in branches. So the Navy was able to directly tell me that. When I talked with the Army, they wouldn't directly tell me that as far as if we were to get a core program there or in one of our schools. But he did say it does look better on the resume. So it was a little bit less of a stronger statement from the other branch, but the Navy did say if we're trending toward 100, then it would be a very positive impact, and they would be looking at our JROTC program, and if not, we would continue with the same footprint, and we'd have a smaller program, and it would just be an NNDCC.
Okay. And how do we, because, I mean, you're bringing, you said that we have 8 schools and we're working on Roseville High School right now. How do we communicate this with the families to get interest? Like, is it through the teacher, like a teacher decides they want to do it and they try and get the interest? Is it student, like, where does it originate from, the interest, and how
Oh,
do we
the
get
interest
more?
in getting a program?
Yeah.
So Rolesville has been communicating that they've wanted a program since Rolesville has opened.
Okay, good.
And I think that's based on community input. I think that there's a lot of folks in that community who have experiences either in the military or with JROTC programming, and that has been allowed and clear to leadership throughout the time that Rolesville High School has been open. There have been other high schools that I've heard from over the past several years, we've made calls on their behalf, but again, that was part of that plateauing. So I think Drew and I talked about this, Mr. Cook and I have had some discussions about exactly what we're going to need to do to open this up when we start having this conversation out and really looking at where programs might best fit in the event that we have the opportunity to expand.
Okay. And then one other quick question, if I could. You mentioned Civil Air Patrol, and we were actually part of that program. It's great. It was wonderful. How do they incorporate the different, like you have Army, Navy, even if you were to bring in the Civil Air Patrol, how do they incorporate as like classroom level? Do they ever go outside of the school?
In JROTC? Yeah, so they have, so there's a lot of co-curricular opportunities with JROTC. So they have things like Raider competitions. They go to JCLC, which is kind of like an Army camp that students are able to do in the summertime. Students are basically being given kind of like the history of whatever program it is that they're aligned to, and they're kind of learning that branch's way of doing things. But then there's all sorts of opportunities for competitions between schools with these Raider competitions and different things. So it's going on constantly, and it really is. It's way beyond academic what goes on with JROTC programming. So those opportunities are all over.
Okay.
And Ms. Coughlin, that's another reason Mr. Glendon mentioned earlier, the importance of a 12-month JROTC instructor versus 10-month
Yep.
is that extracurricular and summer programming. And there's so many different events in the summertime, as the students would call, a lot of the good stuff happens
Yeah.
then. And so that really is kind of a recruiting tool to maintain and build the program and that excitement year-round that you don't have with just a 10-month traditional calendar teacher.
Yeah, it's kind of like a celebration at the end that keeps them coming back.
There's
right?
a lot of good stuff happens in the summertime.
Yeah, sure does. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions, any other comments? No one? All right, then. We appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And that will bring us to the conclusion of our work session agenda. So we will conclude the work session now, and then we will reconvene at our scheduled time for our board meeting.